What's up everyone, Devin from Debo's Fishing here, and today we are talking about spinnerbaits. Specifically, we're going to get into 5 tips, kind of the when, where, what, why, how, you know, all that. Because these days I'm hearing people say far too often, oh, spinnerbaits, they don't work anymore. I just throw a chatterbait. There's no reason to throw this thing. Or I hear some people be like, oh, white and chartreuse spinnerbait. Yeah, they used to throw those. Those are old school. There's way better lures to throw now. Well, those are reasons exactly why I want to talk about spinnerbait fishing today, because they still catch fish. Okay, the first tip I want to talk about is when to tie on a spinnerbait. Now listen, you ask 5 different folks when they use a spinnerbait, and there's a good chance you're going to get 5 different answers. Because keep in mind, there's a lot going on with a spinnerbait. You've got blades, you've got flash, you've got vibration. You've got a pretty large profile with all this going on, a lot of water displacement. Well, because there's so much going on with that, I usually think about times where the fish's senses are broken up. So times when I have wind, times when it's overcast, low light, you know, cloudy, stained to muddy water, water clarity, and fish actively pushing forward. So those are kind of all the things. So putting all that together, what the heck does all that mean? Well, I usually like to have a couple things going on that are breaking up senses. So I generally like to see a little bit of a ripple on the water. If it's one of those summer days where it's completely dead still calm, there's not a breath of air and it's just glass out there, generally not reaching for a spinnerbait. Or times where I've got that stained to dirty, muddy water, I really like a spinnerbait because it has that drawing power. Now, I'm not saying that you can't throw a spinnerbait, you know, a little finesse one with some little willow blades like this. You can throw something like this with more of a translucent skirt and cleaner, clear water. But there's generally things I'll go to that I think fit that better. A swim jig, you know, an underspin, a paddle tail, something like that. So again, this isn't the always right answer. Different people use it in different areas. I'm just saying, for me, I like to have some stain to the water. I would say 3-ish, 2 foot less of visibility is when I like the spinnerbait, because of that extra drawing power, that flash, vibration, water displacement, and movement. All those help you when there's a ripple on the water and the fish can't exactly see what's going over them, and there's a little bit of stain to it, especially when they're just reacting to a bait coming by. The other big thing is when there is bait. I especially like to use a spinnerbait because if you notice these blades, when they're flashing and going in the water and spinning around there, what's that look like? It looks like a little bait fish flashing on there, right? So it's giving off kind of this look of a little miniature school of fish. Couple fish moving up here, one large one under them, kind of a little school of fish moving through the water. So I'm talking pre-spawn when those fish are starting to eat, getting ready, moving up shallow to spawn, and they're really eating, looking at bait, and that's a great time. Post-spawn, once fish have got done spawning, they've moved out, they need to re-bulk up, you know, because that spawning process takes a lot out of them. In the fall, like now, oftentimes they'll have bait fish corralled, pushed on these flats, eating them because they've got to get, again, all fed up and chunky for winter when they go out. Okay, now you know some of the conditions I'm looking for, but what type of spinnerbait am I going to tie on? There's a bunch on the market these days. You've got some of these, the Strike King, I forget what they are, the tournament something. They're only like $7-8. It's a great little spinnerbait here. It's wire tied. As you can see there, it's got the soft plastic keeper. Some will have soft plastic keepers, some do not. For example, the nickel spinnerbaits. These do not have a soft plastic keeper, and some people fish it. I add it to add a little bit more bulk, a little bit of weight if it's a little bit too windy. But overall, I don't fret too much about adding like a soft plastic worm or grub or paddle tail. It does bulk it up, and it can help in that really muddy water just to add one more level of vibration or movement. Berkley's got some really nice new spinnerbaits out there. I forget what it's called, the Power Blade, something like that. You can see there, this is a double willow combination. We're going to talk about some of this. This one does have just a little X-Zone straight tail spinnerbait. I don't like to add anything with too big of a tail if I'm going to add a trailer, because it can make your spinnerbait run to the left or right if you don't have it exactly straight. So something that really doesn't have movement, just a very small paddle tail or a straight trailer like this. Then of course a couple of the all-time greats. The War Eagle is for many people kind of the standard spinnerbait that they go to. There's other ones that might have different things that they like, but War Eagles have been great for a long time. And the Coverts, I've really liked those a lot the past few years as well. Accent also makes some great little spinnerbaits. This is the Wheeler River Special. You can see it's a lot bulkier, bigger blades, bigger profile. This is a 1/2 ounce. These go up to 1 ounce. Great little spinnerbait as well. So find one that you like with the attributes that you like and pick that one. Now, what do I mean by attributes? What do I want? The number one thing is blades. Man, you can go down a complete rabbit hole, a whole video of just blade talk. But you can see here, this is that Accent spinnerbait, much larger blades on it. This is a little bit more of a finesse, that Strike King, depending on how much vibration you want. Now, generally willows are going to have the least amount of vibration. You know, they come through the water a little bit easier, that large teardrop. Now, something like a big, large, round Colorado or Indiana blade, those are going to have a lot more vibration, bigger surface area as that big, round blade is pumping through the water. So times where it's really muddy, something like this is great. Times where it's dark, really low light, you know, at the end of the day or even in the night, people will fish like a big black, like a dark colored spinnerbait with a big Colorado blade on it to make a lot of thump and vibration in a dark color to make a silhouette fishing at night. I don't get too crazy with the blades. I'll generally fish like a double willow or a tandem like this, a willow Colorado, something like this, just kind of as my all-time go-to. Generally, I'm looking for gold blades in dirtier, muddier water. I think they flash better. And then cleaner water, so let's say I have more of that like 3-foot visibility, I'm going with silver blades, more of that kind of shad mimicking. You can get into bluegill versus shad colors and all that, but for me, this is just kind of what I fish. I go to those. The more vibration I need, I'll bump up to like a Colorado or an Indiana. Now, color of the spinnerbait. I'm super boring when it comes to spinnerbait colors. On all white or like a variation of white, a shad white color. I forget what this is, but it's got like some kind of tannish gold with a little bit of purple, just a hint of yellow, but basically a white spinnerbait, something to mimic shad, crappie, white bass, you know, hybrid bass, that white color. The dirtier that water gets, I do like to go to like a white and chartreuse, something like this, you know, in that dirty water, a white chartreuse with a Colorado blade, kind of one of the old standards, good to go to. But if you've got a specific color in your area that really works, try going to that. I know, for example, post-spawn is a perfect time to deviate from that and throw a bluegill colored spinnerbait. If you've never thrown a bluegill colored spinnerbait post spawn, if you've got, you know, had fronts coming through and it's really dirty, something like this with an orange blade, a Colorado blade, mimics those bluegill up shallow that the bass are now picking on after they've spawned. The bluegill start to move up and spawn in there, and the bass will just crush them. So try a bluegill colored after spawn. And the last thing is size of your spinnerbait in bulk. Like I said before, this accent with the larger blades on it compared to this one with the smaller blades, how much vibration, how much water displacement movement do you need? You know, if you're fishing a dirty river, something like this, that's why they call it the river special. If you're fishing like a little pond and it's, you know, you maybe have 2 foot of visibility, go into something like this. So look at the bulk, look at how big the blades are, and compare that with what you need. Okay, tip number 3 is where do I throw a spinnerbait? Now, again, you can get a bunch of different answers for this, but for me, spinnerbaits and wood go together amazing. Specifically, straight stand-up wood where you're bringing it past stuff quick. You're not having to worry about, you know, all the really brushy, thick stuff. There's definitely better things to throw on that, but standing wood or just like lay down logs and such, a spinnerbait is naturally pretty weedless because it's got this big wire that as long as you keep your rod tip up, you keep moving, it's actually pretty weedless, or I should say snagless, woodless, as you come over things, and it rides upright just like this. You get snagged with the spinnerbait when you hit things and let this go to the side and fall, and that hook can get stuck in the wood. So you want to keep it moving, and generally, like say I'm fishing from the bank around like laydowns and wood and I have to bring it over it, I'm going to keep my rod tip up, and as I get to it, I'll just kind of lift in real quick so it kind of goes up, ramps over it, and doesn't have a chance to fall over. So with that, it does good around wood. Doesn't do good around grass, slimy stuff, you know, algae things, anything that can get stuck in here because it's obviously going to stop these moving, and then it'll start to run sideways and just doesn't work out. When I'm walking the banks bank fishing and I've got like a little drop off, let's say there's a rocky riprap bank and it drops off maybe like 5-6 feet out there. Love throwing this on some of that shallow rock as it's coming down, casting parallel if the rocks are this way, casting parallel to that bank and bringing it back to me, covering water, bouncing the head of this off the rocks, knocking the you know, the paint off here, hitting those rocks as I go through. It's another good way to cover water. You know, you can throw it around dock pylons, anything where you think fish might be hiding, because it's a great reaction bait. You throw this by, the fish can feel it coming, they know something's coming, they're sensing it. As it comes by, they'll just kind of instinctively grab at it, right? That's what a reaction bite is. It's not, they see a little thing, you know, sitting there and it looks really good and they're hungry and they go up and eat it. It's something's coming by them. I always give the ball analogy. I throw a ball at you, you're going to reach out and grab it. Same thing for these. They see something that looks good coming by, they're going to come out and grab it. So any of those high percentage spots where you think a fish could be hiding that you can get this through and not get it all gummed up and gunked up, great spots to try fishing this. Okay, tip number 4. Now that I've determined I've got kind of an overcast day, I've got a little ripple on the water, how do I work the dang thing? I'll be honest, the biggest tip I give folks when they're using a search bait is don't get caught up in zombie mode. So if you've been fishing a spinnerbait for an hour and you haven't got any bites and you're like, why am I fishing this? I hate spinnerbaits. I'm not going to catch anything on it. And you just get in that rhythm of just casting it out and reeling it, right? Nothing's changing. You're not popping your rod. You're just casting by stuff, hoping something will eat it. Well, look for clues and vary your speed. So let's say I'm fishing shallow. If I'm fishing in 3 foot of water, even if I come over that fish's head, it can grab that in no time at all. Fishing shallower, I'll generally run it quicker. I'm usually keeping a spinnerbait up within that first kind of foot of water. There's ways you can slow reel it, bounce it off stuff. You can, kind of yo-yo it. But for me, most of the time, I'm keeping it within a foot, 2 foot of the top of the water because you want to keep it as much over those fish as you can. It's easier for them to feed up than have to go down, straight down and chase it. As I get out deeper, I will allow it to come down more, but again, I'm trying to keep it above the spots where I think the fish are. Water temp plays into that as well. If I've got, the warmer months where I see fish actively chasing shad and such, right now we're in the 60s, starting to dip down to the 50s. 60 degrees is perfect. You can still reel that quick, but as I start to get down, whether it's early spring or now, you might want to slow that down a little bit. Another time to clue in on that is, let's say you've been kind of zombie fishing and you almost get it to you and you just kind of speed it up a little bit right at the bank there and it comes out and a fish comes out and tries to grab it, right at the bank. And you're like, oh, that was crazy, man. I sped it up there and that fish tried to get it. And then you just cast out and go right back to zombie mode. Maybe that fish reacted because you sped it up. Maybe you popped your rod tip when you did that. Those are things that can clue you in on that and say, okay, maybe I just need to switch up my retrieve a bit. The second big tip on that is hit stuff. Get close to stuff. Fish it. I don't remember who said it, but fish it like you've already lost it. When you're fishing around wood and cover, docks and stuff, you don't want to be 3 feet out from it. If I'm getting close to a log, eventually I want to hit it. I want to hit it and come over it, or I want to get right next to that dock piling and hit it. Or if I'm fishing that riprap bank, let it hit some of those rocks and kind of bounce off. Try to hit stuff because that's going to help aid in that reaction. When something's coming through there and boom, bounces off something like a square bill or crankbait, fish will react to that kind of weird movement. So hit stuff and vary up your speeds when you're working a spinnerbait. Okay, the fifth and final tip is, what combo should I throw this on? I get this question all the time. I'm going to try spinnerbait fishing. What combo is the best to try it on? Well, again, you ask 5 people, you might get 5 different answers. But for me, I like a 7-foot medium heavy rod rated for lures 3/4 or up to 1 ounce, a fast to a moderate fast, which means a fast rod, it's hard to show you here, but you can see this is more of a moderate fast rod. This is one of the TFO professional rods, 7-foot medium heavy, but it's got a softer tip. So it's got that medium heavy backbone, and the action is referring to where that tip bends. So the faster it is, extra fast, just kind of the tip bends. A fast, it bends just a little bit more. Moderate fast, it bends down a little bit more. And that's what I like, because when you've got a moving bait like this, same type of rod I like for my chatterbaits, swim jigs, when you've got a moving bait going by, if it's real stiff, real sensitive, and you just feel that little pop, you tend to jerk the rod too early. I do anyway. So I like something with a little bit softer tip. So as that fish comes up and grabs it, the rod tends to load just a little bit before I set the hook into it. 7 foot is what I like because I'm really focused on casting accuracy with a spinnerbait. It's not like I'm trying to throw it 50 yards, clear down this grass flat and cover a ton of water. It's something I'm usually target casting to, a big tree or a lay down, a little stump pile, something like that, and I want accuracy. So 7 foot's a great do-it-all for me. When it comes to the reel and line, for a reel, find a reel that you're comfortable with. I like something with an aluminum frame. I think they last longer. You can get those usually at the $99 price point and up because a lot of times you are around wood. You are putting more stress, more torque into it. Specifically a reel that deals with a bait that's got more resistance with these blades. With this on here, you add a paddle tail. It's got a lot of resistance and drag in the water, meaning it's not super easy to reel it in. You're going to feel those blades thumping, and it's got resistance kind of pulling against you as you're reeling it in. So a reel that does well with that. I like a little bit slower speed. So this is a 6.3-1. This is a Diabazillion. You don't need to go anything this crazy. It could be like a Lew's LFS in the 6 speed. Something just a little bit slower in that 6 range is nice because it has a little bit more torque to it. You won't feel like you're really trying to grind to reel that spinnerbait in. So speaking of that line, I'm a fluorocarbon guy. It could be anywhere from 15 up to 20 pound fluorocarbon for me. Depends on how much stuff you're around. If I'm just around a little lake that's just got a couple laydowns, 15's fine. If I'm fishing heavy wood where there's a chance that it could, you know, take my spinnerbait and get me into something, I err on the side of caution and go with heavier line. So as long as it's not impacting the spinnerbait, you know, you have a real tiny 1/4 ounce spinnerbait with 20-pound line, probably not going to work. So you just kind of got to match that up and pick what works for you. So those are my 5 tips on throwing the old spinnerbait. Man, back in the day, a man spinnerbait, Hank Parker Classic. Oh my gosh, they caught me so many fish. And after this, the chatterbait came out, I feel like a lot of people put the spinnerbait away. So now's a perfect time to pick them back up. I feel like they're kind of coming back in resurgence. They definitely still catch fish, so don't sleep on the spinnerbait. But again, my name's Devin from Debo's Fishing, coming to you on the Monster Bass channel. Thanks for watching, and until next time.